Today, I'm going to show you a brief introduction into p5.js. Let's get started. If you haven't done much programming before, I really recommend watching an intro to programming video first before diving into this one. This video is very tailored for p5.js and not really about the fundamentals of programming. p5.js is a JavaScript library that allows you to create really cool creative coding projects, like games and visualizations. If you've ever used processing before, it's quite similar in its methodology, so p5 would be pretty easy to pick up if you do have a background in processing. p5 is free and open source, and it has a lot of really great references and libraries to learn from. So this is the basics p5 website. It has a lot of different information about the library. It has references of different kinds of functions you can call, different libraries that were created by the community, and examples for you to learn from. If you're just getting started into the world of creative coding, I think p5 is a great place to start because not only will you learn the basics and fundamentals of coding, but you can also share your work online because everything is through a JavaScript library. There's also a p5 editor for you to use to kind of do some work inside of this editor, and then you can preview it on the right side. But all the work I'm going to do today will be through Sublime Text. So if we hop to Sublime, I am working on this file, and right now I just have my basic HTML file and my Sketch.js file. So to create a p5 project, you need to first create an HTML file that has different sources associated with it. I just included a link to my CSS style sheet, which currently I don't have a style sheet, but I will eventually make one. And then I have my script tag for my JS file, which I have right here. So this is the basic framework of how to get started with it that you would plop into your HTML file, and then you would create a JavaScript file called Sketch.js. In p5, there are two basic functions that you need for your project. You should have a function setup and a function draw. Setup occurs only once. It only occurs at the very beginning of the project. So when you load your HTML file, setup is called once, and draw is called continuously throughout the project. So you're going to want to put things that only occur once in setup, like initial state, initial variables, and things like that. Draw will be called once every frame, so that will continuously change throughout the project. So things like animations and interactions, you're going to want to put in the draw function. So just to get started, I'm going to start with something super simple. Just to make sure that this is working properly, I'm going to create a circle on the screen. So I will write ellipse and then put in variables for it. There are different kind of elements that you can call that are native to this JavaScript library. The ellipse element will make ellipses and circles if you make the width and the height the same. So this element calls for 4 different values. So the first value I need to put is the X position of where I want to start the ellipse, so I will put 20. Then I will put the Y position of the ellipse, I will also put 20. And then I will put a width and a height variable, so I will put 30 and 30. And at the end, always remember to include your semicolon. And I'm putting this in draw because I want it to continuously persist throughout this project, and I want it to stay in that place. So I will save it, and then I will go to my index file and click enter, and there it is. There is my circle. If I wanted to warp the way that it looked in some direction, I could change that other number, 60, and I go back to my project and refresh. You can see how it is distorted, and now it looks like a typical ellipse. Now the great thing about p5 is that you can include a lot of really fun interactivity to your project. So instead of having this ellipse be static at 2020, I am going to make this mouseX and mouseY. So this ellipse will follow where my mouse is on the screen. And there it is. Now, why is it contained in this small little thing, right? I have this whole big screen that's being used. Why is it contained in this small thing? Well, with P5, there's this idea of a canvas. Your project lives in a certain canvas dimension, and that is defined in setup. So by default, it is only this really small canvas area, but we are going to want to expand it. So I'm going to write create canvas, and then put in a width and a height that I would like. So I might put 600 by 600. Save it again, go back to it, refresh, and now it is a much bigger canvas size. So to this draw, I might want to add a background color of maybe 200. So it's a gray, and refresh, and now it's this gray. We don't see this being saved anymore, or that weird kind of Windows effect, because every single time a background is being drawn on top. Before, a background wasn't being drawn, so you would see every single ellipse that was ever created. But now, since there is a background that is being drawn on top, you do not see that anymore. Now let's include some color. So let's have a fill for this ellipse, and maybe I don't want to have it exactly set. So following like the typical like RGB kind of protocol, like red, green, blue, I'll put random 255, random 255. And now every single time draw is called, it is changing the color. So that is why it is changing so rapidly. So maybe it's changing a little too much. So instead, I'll have these set to more stable values like 250, 200, and 100. Save it, go back, and now it's set to this kind of like orangey color. I don't really care for the stroke, so let's get rid of that. So I'll write no stroke, and then the stroke is removed. For contrast, that's kind of bad, so maybe I'll set this to 50. So it's a darker background and this oval that's there. So now let's make this a little bit more interesting and set some variables. So this is just like regular JavaScript, where I'm going to set var for variable, and I'm going to say xpos for x position and var ypos for y position. Then I'm going to set this ellipse to x position and y position. Now if I save it and I go back here and refresh, it doesn't appear. Why is that? It's because I created variables for these positions, but I never initialized it. I never gave it an initial value anywhere. So that's why it doesn't appear on the screen. So in setup or above, I could just basically say, okay, set this equal to 30 initially, and set this equal to 100 initially. And there, it appears right on the screen, but it doesn't follow my mouse anymore. So now I want to include some interactivity to this. So every single time I click the up and down arrow, I want this ellipse to move. So now I'm going to create another function called function keyPressed, which is part of the p5.js library. So what I'm going to write now is that when a key is pressed, first I want to identify when a particular key is pressed, then I want a particular behavior to occur. So I'll say if that key code, which is like the value of that key, absolutely, which is the triple equals up underscore arrow, then I want some certain behavior to occur. Else if that key code absolutely equals the down arrow, then I want a particular behavior to occur. So basically, these variables are numbers that indicate the x and y position of that ellipse, that starting position. When I click the up arrow or the down arrow, I want the y position of the ellipse to be modified. If the up arrow is selected, I want the y position to actually decrease. The way that the canvas works is that This is the 0, 0 position, and in this direction the X position increases, and in this direction the Y position increases as it goes down. So the closer we want it to get to this part, it is the 0, 0 position of the screen. So when I click the up arrow, I actually want that Y position to decrease. So like the new Y position is equal to the original Y position where it currently is -5. And this will automatically update it. And then if the down arrow is selected, I want the Y position to increase. So I want the new Y position to be equal to the old Y position plus 5 pixels. And I will save it now, go back to my drawing, refresh it. And now if I click the up arrow, the ellipse goes up by 5, and if I click the down arrow, it goes down by 5. So I hope you enjoyed this brief introduction into p5.js. p5.js has a lot of different capabilities that you can use to create really cool visualizations and art projects. Please let me know if you have any questions about the topic, and I'll be happy to answer them. Thanks for watching!